Pokemon has an investor problem. And no, the Pokemon company is not looking for investors or struggling in that department. What I mean is Pokemon has stopped being a hobby, it has stopped being a collection for people who enjoy the brand, and it has turned almost exclusively into an investment. And I believe the investor mentality that has now infested the Pokemon trading card game hobby is slowly going to choke out all of the people who view it as a hobby, and it will turn exclusively into essentially like a physical stock market. But before I go into that, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy or find value in this video, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button down below. It does help my channel out a lot. So this article that I have on screen right here is going to be a perfect depiction of what I mean. Now you can see this was posted on September 10th. This problem has been going on for significantly longer than September 10th, and we'll talk about kind of the timeline with all of that. But you can see September 10th, people outside of the Pokemon world are starting to catch on to what some people who have been in the Pokemon world for a long time have known, tried to keep secret, and now once this kind of the cat gets out of the bag, we'll talk about the ramifications of how this kind of explodes. So on September 10th, the Wall Street Journal posted about Pokemon cards outperforming the S&P 500. For those of you who don't know, the S&P 500 is sort of a benchmark of how the stock market is doing. Anything that outperforms the S&P 500 is seen as a very strong investment. And issue number one is Pokemon cards in this article are listed as an investment. And again, this is supposed to be a hobby, a trading card game primarily, with artworks that people in the hobby, people who grew up with Pokemon, get to enjoy. They have their favorite Pokemon, they have rare arts and all that stuff. We have started looking at Pokemon as an investment, and you can hear it in a lot of the ways that PokeTubers talk about products. They talk about boxes, they talk about set releases. It's no longer about what are the cool artworks that are coming out. Almost everybody exclusively starts talking about these as investments. They talk about their portfolio, they talk about their sealed collection, and once enough people start feeling about this, we'll talk about I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We will talk about how that destroys the hobby and kind of creates a snowball effect. So down here, you have to actually pay for the whole thing to get everything. But what we really need to see is this right here. So they talk about how there has been an over 3,000% return, which is unheard of in the stock market specifically, right? This accounts for the boom of 2020. You can see in 2020 this massive spike right here. This is when things kind of blew out of proportion. And so a lot of people will say, oh, well, things boomed in 2020 and that's why we are where we are. And that's fine. There has been a correction, except, recently. This represents what started happening in the Surging Sparks, with the Surging Sparks release, so about a year ago. You can see there was a correction from the massive boom, but even before the boom. So this black line is the S&P 500, okay? So again, that is your indicator for the stock market's, the way that it has performed, okay? Even before the boom, Pokemon was outperforming the stock market as early as 2017. Okay, so Pokemon in 2017, people were starting to realize that these can be an investment. If you keep things sealed and you are patient long enough, they only appreciate with value because Pokemon stops printing them. There is a finite supply, unlike stocks, which can continue to grow forever. There's a finite supply of Pokemon, and so they started outperforming the S&P 500. And then with the COVID boom, you saw the massive jump up. You saw products that hadn't been talked about for a while go through the roof. And now again, we are seeing a massive boom that started last year in November, almost exactly a year ago at this point, with the release of Surging Sparks. And anybody who has been collecting from before Surging Sparks, no matter how far before, you knew that products used to be all over the place. It used to be abundant. People were trying to almost give away booster boxes. You had booster boxes selling for $105, $110. Essentially, like the competition, because the inventory was so plentiful, competition was driving all the prices down. With Surging Sparks, something flipped. All of a sudden, there was less product available than where there was the demand, and instead of there being an abundance, now all of a sudden people sold out. And this was the first time that this had happened in a very long time, where businesses sold out of stuff very quickly instead of just being able to have as much as they wanted. Distributors did not have enough to restock them. And then you went into prismatic evolutions, and those two steps in a row created the snowball, the avalanche of what we're currently in, which is how you see this gigantic spike upwards right there. Now, why is it an issue for a hobby like this to be considered an investment? Well, the issue is once this becomes an investment, a couple things are going to happen. The number one thing is you are going to have a brand new community of people who dogpile into trying to purchase product. Whereas it used to just be people who either wanted to play the game or who grew up with Pokemon, have kids they want to get into it, or just enjoyed the artwork. You now have a massive new community of investors. And these investors don't have to know anything about Pokemon. They don't have to be in the community. They don't care about opening stuff. The investors just get in because they know that this has become a very solid investment. They know that your return is all but guaranteed if you are patient enough. And so you have a brand new community of people, this huge influx into the purchasing market that sucks inventory away from the people who have been collecting for either the game or the hobby. And this issue further compounds because those investors are not opening these products. They are buying things from the stores. They are buying things from the businesses. TCG Player, they're getting it off of the Pokemon Center drop, and they are doing it exclusively to hold on to the product. So essentially what's happening is the products are disappearing into thin air, and they're not being opened. The community is not receiving the cards. The value of the individual chase cards are not going down because nothing's getting opened. We're getting actually less chase cards available, which is driving the price of the chase cards up. It's also driving the demand for the products up because people feel like nothing is available. They're used to going to their Walmart, Target, local game store and just being able to have, a bunch of choices of what they can buy. They start going to these stores and not seeing anything available, and now all of a sudden there's a panic. Why is nothing available? If I want to get stuff, I have to buy off the secondary market, and I have to start paying these increased prices because people know that there's a limited inventory and that things are going to sell out at almost no matter what they choose to charge. So this drives this compounding issue where the people who have come in to buy are not putting it back into the Pokemon economy, essentially. They are sucking it out, and they're holding on to it for, years at a time in order to drive up its value, and they'll sell later down the line. We've seen lots of videos and pictures of people whose basement is full of sealed products. And all that they're doing is taking the products away from the Pokemon hobby enjoyers, and they are setting it aside so they can sell for, these 4,000% upcharges in 5, 10, 20 years. Pokemon is actually currently experiencing a lot of the same thing that NFTs went through a couple of years ago. So the idea of NFTs was to provide a proof of digital ownership and something that you can transfer into other digital spaces. In theory, there are a lot of good uses for it. As of right now, no one has actually come up with a true good practice for it, nothing that actually has stuck with anything. But the theory was there to begin with. And what happened was people recognized that this could be an investment. Now, all of a sudden, it was treated the same way that art was, where if you buy this thing, it can drive the price up. And now it's no longer about a digital ownership. It is about an investment. We saw the massive NFT boom. However, the difference there was that people then recognized, oh wait, this is actually useless. Like these things don't have any value outside of what other people are going to pay for it. And then people just stopped being willing to pay for it. NFTs crashed down to essentially less than pennies at a time. The difference with Pokemon is that Pokemon does actually have value. Pokemon has value because it is a physical product. It does exist, and there is a finite amount of it. NFTs, you can technically just continue to create as many as you want. And as of right now, there have been no applications that use them. Pokemon has a lot of applications between the game, the collections, the artwork, the grading, all of that stuff. And so we're going through the same boom, but there is nothing that is pulling back on it. There's no crash that is happening. And I know people say that we're in the middle of the crash right now. It's not affecting the products whatsoever. It might be affecting your chase cards. Your chase cards might be going down in value a little bit right now. The products themselves are not pulling back. The booster boxes are not going down. The inventory is not increasing. We're not going through a crash the way that a lot of people have been talking about or explaining it. So an example of that right here, we have the Destined Rivals booster box. This was at absurd levels. It was about to hit $500 on its way up in the secondary market. So our crash brought it down. It's now stabilized in the high 300s, about $400 range. That crash doesn't really fix anything. It doesn't help anybody. $400 booster boxes are not what the community is looking for. That pullback, that crash, like I said, has not actually improved the Pokemon economy for pretty much anybody. And so I mentioned there are a lot of PokeTubers, people who make content in the Pokemon space, who have started talking about Pokemon products as investments. They started talking about portfolios, sealed products. There's an infinite amount of channels and videos that do market watches where they cover either sealed products, they go over different chase cards, and they show these graphs right here, talking about which cards they think are going to boom, which cards they think are going to crash, and giving people advice for all that. And to a degree, that does influence the market. A lot of people will follow based off of what that creator says, and it will kind of create rises and falls. But the issue fundamentally is that this right here has become the main focus of Pokemon. This graph. The graph of, is money going up, is money going down? That's become the focus. And of the content that's being produced about Pokemon, I would argue more content is being produced from the guise of investments, from the market watch standpoint, than the actual hobby itself, whether that's the game or just the artworks, the collections. And that is catering to all of the new investor bro type people who have influxed into the hobby, right? And when you have that giant influx in and everything starts shifting into an investment mindset, we're creating the situation that we're in right now, where people are buying things almost no matter what the price is, because they feel like it is a guaranteed investment. And this is one of the most damning pieces of evidence that we have. Phantasmal Flames booster boxes. So down here we have the information. And you can see the price is coming down. It started all the way up at $345. There has been 1,700 boxes sold to this point. Okay, we are still over 2 weeks away from the release date. 1,700 boxes sold. The lowest price has been $300. And if we actually look at it, most of the sales are above $300 to $315. It was in the $330 range for a while. People are buying $300 booster boxes before release because they feel like, A, there's not going to be a lot of product available, and this is I'm not going to talk about allocations in this video, but the allocations are horrible for this set. They feel like there's not going to be any product available, so they're willing to get it at almost any price. And people say, okay, no matter what I buy this box at right now, the price is going to go up eventually. If I am patient enough, if I hold on to this, the box will go up in a decade. If I pay $400 at release, someday it will be worth, $2,000 or whatever. And so that investment mindset is creating this FOMO right here. That 1,700 sold at above $300, which is setting the secondary market price significantly above what it would be if people weren't trying to all scoop up these boxes to hoard them away in their sealed collections. Once we have a secondary price set, then all of the stores have a reference for, okay, well, this is what the secondary market is, so this is what I'm going to charge for it. And then the prices, you see, they almost never come down after the first, let's say, 2 weeks of a set release. There's an initial kind of drop down, and then when restocks happen, there's like little dips or so. But then from that point forward, it doesn't go back down. So you put all of these things together, and this avalanche is creating this issue right here. $300 release booster boxes. And I truly believe this all starts from the investor mindset. The moment Pokemon shifted into an investment, the moment there was a massive influx of people instantaneously, it feels like, into the Pokemon hobby, this all went downhill. And I am not smart enough to know how this gets corrected. I'm not smart enough to know what the Pokemon company needs to do to fix this. I have heard stats, I can't back this up, but I've heard stats that the Pokemon cards that have been printed in the past few years, more than half of all Pokemon cards ever printed have been printed in the past couple of years. Okay, which means Pokemon is printing more than ever, and they still cannot even come close to what the current demand is, which means, because people feel like there's nothing available, almost all of that increase in printing is getting hoarded away in sealed collections. The only thing that makes sense, if we truly are printing more cards than ever, for these sets, more product than ever before, and at the same time people feel like there is less than anything ever. That gap is being filled entirely by sealed investor collectors. And I don't know how this gets fixed. I have not seen a light at the end of the tunnel for a while. Phantasmal Flames is only getting worse. Nothing is improving. I don't know how this gets fixed. I don't have the foresight. I don't have the market understanding to see how this gets fixed. I don't think Pokemon does either, because as we've seen now, this problem has been happening for a year. We're coming up on the 1-year start to this problem, and things are getting worse, not better. This is now the second set in a row that is getting a split wave release, which means Pokemon is not going to have enough of the products available on the release date to send out everything to the distributors. So they are sending out as much as they can, about 60% or so, and then once they catch up and print the rest, they'll send that out about a month later. That again is just pointing to the fact that they're falling farther and farther behind, and they don't have a solution for this either. So I wish I had good news for you. Unfortunately, I don't. I think the investor mindset, this kind of like parasitic community, the investor community that has latched onto the Pokemon products, has made things significantly worse, and I don't see it going anywhere. I don't see people losing the bag, like holding the bag, losing money on this investment stuff that's going to drive those people back out. And so I'm not really sure. I don't know how this ever gets corrected, unless people legitimately just stop buying products, which I know isn't going to happen. So I don't know. This isn't a video of how to correct it. This is a video to identify, in my opinion, what the issue has been and how this investor mindset, and all of the creators that have turned into the investor advice people as far as the products go, is making the product worse and not better. And I know there are a lot of people watching this video who probably have a lot of sealed collection. They view Pokemon as investments as well. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it specifically. You are free to do what you want with your money. But once Pokemon went from a hobby and a collection and a game to an investment, the snowball started. And to this point, nobody has had any solutions for how to fix it. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching me ramble on about the investor problem in Pokemon. Like I said earlier in the video, if you did watch this far and you found any of it to be helpful, you enjoyed the information, please subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it very much. I hope you guys all have a great day, and thanks for watching.